Hey everybody, it's Check the Effects coming at you with another Minecraft tutorial, and today we're going over counters, both the piston variety and the pistonless variety. So without further ado, let's get to the tutorial. So the first design we're going to go into is the piston version of the counter. Now I'll be honest about this is not my design. This is a design I found on YouTube by XRush101, and I really like this because he had an effective usage of repeater locks, or otherwise known as repeater latches or locks. You can call them latches or locks, however you want to say it. But he has made an effective use of these in making this very compact and very simple design. Now, one thing that he did have to overcome is that if he was going to use a button to count, that button is going to have a 2-second pulse, which is far longer than what these repeaters are set to. This is set to just one tick on every single one. So if this button turns on, what happens is that the power to this line is going to turn off, and as these are going to stay off for 2 seconds, that's more than enough time for the current to dissipate through all of these repeaters. So in order to get over that, Rush came up with the solution of adding a controlled piston pulse generator, which allows a pulse that's shorter than 2 seconds and actually is about equal to 1 tick, as it is set up for those. So if I go ahead and turn this on and off, you'll see that you have a 1 tick pulse from that goes to this redstone lamp over here, because you got this redstone torch that turns on for roughly 1 tick. Okay, and how this works is you got power going into this block from this button and turns off this redstone torch. As long as this redstone torch is turned on, this block stays powered and keeps this redstone torch turned off and the piston extended. The moment it turns off, there's no power here and the piston will retract. Also, the redstone torch will turn on and cause this piston to extend again. Now, for those of you who don't know, prior to the introduction of repeaters, people used to use inverters to create clock systems or delays. So this mechanism here is an inverter. So there's actually going to be a 1 tick delay from when this block stops receiving power and when this redstone torch turns back on again, and that's why the piston is able to go down and up so fast. So like that, without having any repeaters up there to cause a delay for it to go up and down. So if we go back to Rush's old design, we'll go ahead and see how this works. So we'll push the button once and you get count of 1, count of 2, count of 3, and a count of 4, and then light turns on and then resets. So every time you hit this, it will increment the count using these latched or locked repeaters, and you may have noticed that. See how it turned off there? The first one turned off, second one turned off, third one turned off, and then the fourth one turned off, and then it resets. Okay, and so how this works is because you got a 1 tick pulse that basically allows for this line to turn off when it retracts. What happens is all these repeaters will turn off, and then the current goes through this, dissipates through all these repeaters, but this one's holding on to a current, right? And all of them are holding on to a current. So what happens is it dissipates from this one into this. So this one turns off, and then this one gets the current from this one, and then what happens is it goes into this block here, and the moment it comes back down, that allows this one here to stay on, and it also allows for this one to stay on. This here is a reset mechanism. We'll get into that in a bit, and you'll notice that this repeater is set to 3 ticks while this one is also set to 3 ticks, right? And while this one is set to 2 ticks. So because of that, that makes sure that these two repeaters will stay on when this one goes up and down, and that way is only when all of these repeaters are turned off that this will turn off, and then this one turns off, and when those two turn off, this redstone torch will turn on, and so will this one. And when this redstone torch turns on, that will allow these to reset by you have a power going constantly through this. It'll also go through this block and then go into these repeaters and lock everything, so you have the whole mechanism reset. So when I looked at Rush's original design, I thought, as I mentioned before, this is awesome, this is great, it's geniusly simple. It uses these repeater locks or repeater latches very effectively. And I just thought, well, what's a way that we can make this better? And the only way I thought of is how to make this without a piston. The big issue is, why would I want to go pistonless? Well, for one thing, pistons do cause a lot of lag on servers, so it's much more lag than just regular redstone dust and other redstone components. Mind you that you still get lag from a whole bunch of repeaters turning on and off. However, the pistons are one issue that you have when you want a server, especially since the fact that a lot of servers have limits on the number of pistons you can use. So in response to that, I decided to create a pistonless version, and this, instead of using the piston version of your pulse controlled your piston controlled pulse there, I'm using my little comparator STP. And so it works pretty much the same way. You push the button over here, and this time it's counting 1, 2, 3, and 4, and your light turns on and the whole thing resets. Okay. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is that the number of little locks or latches you have, that equals the number of pulses that you can count. Okay. So in this case, it's 4. If I decrease this to 2, then it'll count to 2. If I increase it to, I don't know, 60, it'll count to 60. And just as long as it's within the area or within the chunk or active chunks that you have, this will work, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at how this works. So in this case, this goes into an STP, which then goes into this inverter. This inverter is what allows you to have this these lines over here powered constantly. And when the STP turns on, that turns off this inverter, and then these, or the redstone torch that's there, and then this line will turn off and deactivate these repeaters, the same way it works with Rush's original design. Now, just as with Rush's design, we've got this here, which is all of these are equal to 1 tick. All of these over here are equal to 2 ticks, except for this last one here, which is set to 1 tick. And that has to do with the way this STP works. You had to, in order for this to escape out, you had to make sure that it's set to 1 tick on the last one. The repeater over here is set to 3 ticks, whereas over here you don't need a repeater. It just has an output going straight out from this redstone torch. So if I go ahead and hit the button, you'll see they disengage, and it's working exactly the same way as the mechanism over here on Rush's version. So now if I go ahead and hit it again a couple of times, you'll see how the STP is deactivating and letting the redstone torch to reactivate, so that you have that pulse going along the main line that's there for the locking repeaters. But let's go ahead and let me just try and get an angle here where you can see the other redstone torch. Okay, let's get up there. There we go. So now you can see the other redstone torch that's there. Now if I hit this button, you're going to see that the other redstone torch activates, which causes this one to deactivate, but it's going to stay deactivated for more than 1 tick. So there's going to be like 2 ticks or so, and it's actually going to be about 2 ticks or more that this is going to stay on because of the delay caused by these ones over here. Okay, and what's going to happen in this case is that this is going to turn off and cause this one to turn off, and then that turns this redstone torch on. That allows all the power to go from the redstone torch into these repeaters, and then it deactivates this redstone torch and allows this one to reactivate, which allows these repeaters to latch these ones over here and lock them into a reset state. So that's how the basic concept of your pistonless counter works. So then I took my original pistonless version of the counter design and I thought, okay, how can I take this and this design here and make it more flexible in terms of, I wanted to see if I can make it so that instead of just getting an output after I've counted to 4 or after I've counted to whatever number it is, I can have this design set so that it counts after every single pulse that's generated. So in the sense of like this, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then resets. Okay, and this is very similar to it's the same idea as this, except now what I've done is I've added inverters, basically a block with a redstone torch, on the output of every single latched repeater that's there, or every locked repeater. Okay, so that way, as long as this is receiving, as long as this one is powered, this redstone torch will stay on and you have a signal going out. So that's one way of creating this particular mechanism. So go ahead and, now the rest of it of course works the exact same way as the other design that I had, except this time I don't have an output on this side. Now if I wanted to, I can just put an output on there if I wanted to, but that's all up to you if you want to do that or not, right? And an application that I did use this in was, for instance, counting the number of minecarts that pass by a detector rail and basically switching rails based on the order of the minecarts. So essentially we'll do like this. So you have your first minecart goes and it passes the detector rail, you count 1, and that you have a rail switch and it goes into rail number 1. Then what happens, you have this occur again and it goes switched into rail number 2. The third one goes into rail number 3, and the fourth minecart goes into rail number 4, and then it resets. So that's how I ended up using this one. A more elaborate design is something that I came up here. I had a friend of mine who on Paradise Realms who wanted me to create a delay mechanism that would allow me to count every second and every, I don't know, every 10 seconds or every, I don't remember how many seconds it was. He would want the basically this note here to keep on playing. So I think what happened is that he had a musical, like some sort of music contraption that he attached it to, and this allowed it to keep playing over and over in a loop. So, and also it allowed him to stop it and start it anytime. If I turn this on, what happens is, you can see 1, 1000, 2, 1000, 3, 1000, 4, 1000. So every 2 seconds you get a pulse that's there. And what happens is this counter over here is counting the number of pulses from this, and then it also sends an output to here, and this counter counts how many times a pulse comes out of this counter, which then, as long as the first output over here, because I'm using the design on the far end there where you have your multiple outputs, well, on the very first count it'll allow this clock to keep on going. So this clock is basically, it could be anything like your music contraption or whatever the case is, but anyways, you get a pulse that comes in, and or a constant redstone current or whatever the case is, and you have your output that comes in at that particular point, and then you can see in this case it's a comparative clock which then feeds an output into this particular musical note box. And you can probably, as you've seen after a certain point, let's go ahead and let this thing go. There it goes, and it starts again. and you'll see the little note coming out. I know you probably can't hear it, but you can at least see the little note coming out of the note block that's there. So that's everything we have for counters today. Hope you enjoyed it and found it informative. So until next time, this is Check the Effects signing off. Please like and subscribe. Peace.